Are you sick of dying in Fallout 76? Do you just want to do all the in-game content and not need to worry about going down? Well, do I have the video for you. Today we are going to be talking about the chainsaw, and I'm going to be showing you a melee build that is going to make you unkillable in this game. Now, you will need to be a minimum level of 20 to get the chainsaw, but if you are level 20 and above, then you will be able to follow this guide, and by the end of it, you will become unkillable. So if you like what you see, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and let's get right into the video. So the first thing that I'm going to be talking about is the locations for these chainsaws. You can't actually make the chainsaws, you have to go out into the world and look for them. So the first location is going to be Metal Dome. This is just east of Vault 76. The reason that we're going to this location first is because there's no enemies around. But once you spawn into this location, you're just going to be following my character on screen right now. You're basically going to just go on the outside of the Metal Dome all the way along towards the back of the location. And you'll see the building right there, and all you have to do is walk in and the chainsaw is on the floor. Pick it up and you will have your first chainsaw. So the second location that you're going to be going to is the Ranger District office. This is just north of Watoga Station, but once you spawn in, all you have to do is run towards the building, and once you get close to the building, go around the back to the barn. Once you enter the door to the barn, all you have to do is look to your right and you will find the chainsaw on top of the shelf. Once you pick it up, you will have your second chainsaw. And the last location that we're going to be going to is the Crimson Prospect. This is just north of Watoga Station, but once you spawn into this location, you're just going to be following my character on screen right now to the very back. You'll see a massive bus. Once you see that bus, just run towards it and there is going to be a shelf. The chainsaw is at the bottom of the shelf. Just go over, pick it up, and now you have your third chainsaw. So now that we have our chainsaws, let's talk about the mods for the chainsaw. So there's two mods that I would recommend for the chainsaw. One is the Flamer mod and the other is the Dual Bar. The Flamer mod is very easy to come by. All you have to do is go up to any of the train stations and the merchants will be selling it. Once you get it, put on your weapon and now you have the Flamer mod. Now the Dual Bar is a little more difficult because the only way to get the Dual Bar is from scrapping chainsaws. So I just showed you how to get 3 different chainsaws, but if you scrap those chainsaws and you don't get the Dual Bar mod, you will have to scrap more. So the way you get these chainsaws to respawn is go out into the world, pick up 255 items, and the chainsaws will respawn. I will be linking a video down below on how to get items to respawn in Fallout 76 if you don't know how to do it. But all you gotta do is collect 255 items and the chainsaws will respawn. Scrap them and hopefully you'll get your Dual Bar mod. So now that we have our basic mods on our chainsaw, let's talk about the legendary mods. So there is only one legendary mod that you will actually need for this chainsaw, and it's going to be the Vampire's legendary mod. Restore 2% health over 2 seconds when you hit a target. You will be hitting the target a lot when you're using this weapon, which means that you will be restoring a lot of health. Now, if you do want more mods for this weapon, I would recommend getting +1 strength, because the more strength you have, the more damage the chainsaw is going to do. But also, if you can get the replenish 15 action points with each kill, I would highly recommend that, because you do use action points when you use this weapon. And if you can replenish those action points, you will always be able to use this weapon. So the armor that I use for this build is unyielding armor. The lower my health, the more special stats I get. The reason I want more special stats is because the more strength you have, the more damage you will do with the chainsaw. The more agility you have, the more action points you'll have to spend, which means that you can do damage for longer. Now, this isn't the only armor that you can use. You can also use bolstering if you want. The lower your health, the more damage resistance you will have. It's very good to have, and it will help you stay alive for much longer. But of course, if you're not using a bloody build and you want to use a full health build, you can always go with Vanguard, which will help you with your damage resistance when you're at full health. And this chainsaw will 100% keep you at full health, so you'll always have that damage resistance. Now, when it comes to your other legendary mods, I would recommend something like plus strength. because as I said, the more strength you have, the more damage you will be doing with this weapon. But also, if you can get the food, drink, and chem weights are reduced, that is going to be perfect because you will use certain food buffs to do more damage. You'll be drinking whiskey and all to get more strength, so you'll be carrying that around with you. But also, you will have certain chems to help you out with your strength, which will, of course, help you out with your damage. So now let's move on to our perk cards. Now, the perk cards that you're going to be looking out for is anything that gives you more strength, anything that gives you more damage, and anything that gives you damage resist. So when it comes to strength, we have Barbarian, Slugger, Incisor, Expert Slugger, and Master Slugger. This is just a lot of damage that we're going to be able to do, where Barbarian is just going to give us more damage resist. Then we have Perception, and we only have 1 point of Perception because we're just going to be grabbing Refractor. You gain a +10 energy resistance. It's just nice to have, and it's just very decent to have on. Moving on, we then have Endurance. So we have Ironclad, where we just gain more damage resist. When you're not wearing power armor, you won't be wearing power armor with this build, so it's just very nice to have. You also will be using a Fireproof, where you take less damage from explosives and flame attacks. Just very nice to have. Then we have Radical. The greater your rads, the greater your strength. Now, this build is going around a bloody build, so you will have a decent amount of radiation on your character. And the more strength you have, the more damage you will be doing. So this is just a very nice perk to have on. And then we also have Rejuvenated, where you gain even better benefits from being fully fed or fully hydrated. I will go into what that means later. It's just very nice to have, and I would recommend it. Moving on to Charisma, we have Party Girl. The positive effects of pre-war alcohol are tripled. You will be using pre-war alcohol just to give yourself more strength, which means that you're going to be getting more damage. Then we're going to be picking up Strange in Numbers, where the positive mutation effects are stronger if you're on a team. You will be on a team, so this is just going to be a nice passive to have. Then we have Suppressor, where your target does less damage. It's very nice to have. You will always be attacking the target, which means that this will always be procced. Then we have Tenderizer, where you make the target receive more damage. This is just very nice to have to help out with your damage. Moving on to Intelligence, we then have Nord Rage. While below 20% health, gain 40 damage resist, 20% damage, and 15% AP regen. This is very good to have if you're running a bloody build. If you're not running a bloody build, you do not need this perk at all, so do switch this up if you're not using the bloody build. But if you are running the build, you will need this perk. But then we also have Stable Tools, where our melee weapons break 40% slower. This is very good to have since our chainsaw is an automatic melee weapon. Moving on to Agility, we have Action Girl. Action points regenerate 45% faster. Very good to have since our chainsaw uses AP, so I would recommend Action Boy or Action Girl. Moving on, we have True Hiker. Food and drink weights are reduced. You will be carrying around food buffs and alcohol as well, so I would recommend throwing this on. And then we have Adrenaline, where you gain more damage for each kill that you do, up to 60%. Very nice to have, and I would recommend it. And now we're going to be moving on to Luck, where we have a Bloody Mess. This is just to help us out with our overall damage. Very nice passive to have. Then we have Serendipity, where when we go below 30% health, you get again a 45% chance to avoid damage. Very nice perk to have, and I would recommend it. Then we also have Ricochet. Now, Ricochet is actually a weird one, because if you're using a vampire's weapon and you have Ricochet on, it actually procs vampires. So if that hits a random enemy that is shooting you, you will get the vampire's perk to activate. Then we also have Class Freak, where the negative effects of your mutations are reduced. You will be needing this because a few of the mutations that you will have -2 strength, and it will make it easier on the build. And then we're also going to be using Starch Genes, where you will never mutate from rads, and Radaway will never cure mutations. It's just very nice to have, so you can keep your mutations on your character. So now let's move on to our legendary perks. So there's only 2 legendary perks that I would recommend for this build. Taking one for the team because it gives you more damage, and the legendary strength because it also gives you more damage. The other perk that I would recommend is Brawling Chemist, because the chem that this actually gives you is very good for your melee build. And when it comes to the other legendary perks, it doesn't really matter, but I have Master Infiltrator just so I can open doors. I have Intelligence and Luck. They're not needed whatsoever. You can switch it up, but I would recommend taking one for the team and the legendary strength. So now let's move on to our mutations. So for our mutations, I use Adrenal Reaction. I get more weapon damage at low HP. If you're running a bloody build, this is perfect for the build. but if you're not running a blade build, you do not need this mutations. We're also using Bird Bones, where we get more agility, and we also have reduced fall speed. The agility is very nice because the more agility you have, the more action points you have. We're using Carnivore, where our meat-based meals will give us more benefits. This is just very nice because all of the meat-based meals will give you increased damage to your melee damage. So it's nice to have. We're also using Egghead, where we get more intelligence. The Egghead is not needed whatsoever, but it is nice to have if you're looking to get more XP. We're using Grounded to get more energy resist. It's just a nice little passive to have. We're using Herd Mentality, where when you're on a team, you get +2 to your special. Even if there's nobody on your team, this still counts. So I would recommend putting on for a nice passive. We're using Marsupial to get us more carry weight, but our jump height is increased. It's very nice to have, and every build is using this mutation. We're also using Scaly Skin, where we get more damage resist in energy and the basic damage resist. It's very nice to have, and I would recommend it. We're also using Speed Demon. Now, with the chainsaw, you don't reload whatsoever, so Speed Demon is only used to get around faster, and that's the only reason I would recommend it. But then we're also using Twisted Muscles, where we get +25% to our melee damage, and we have an increased chance to cripple the enemy. Very nice to have, and I would recommend it. So before I move on to our main buffs, I do want to talk about the Fully Fed and the Fully Hydrated buff. So for Fully Hydrated, you get AP regen, you get endurance, and you get disease resistance. For Fully Fed, you get strength, max HP, and then disease resistance. So if you come on over to your perk cards and you go down to endurance and over to rejuvenated, once you put that on and you come back to the Fully Fed or the Fully Hydrated buff, you will see that the max HP has been increased on the Fully Fed, and your overall AP regen has increased on the Hydrated. It's so worth doing, and I would highly recommend it. Just always being fully hydrated and fully fed, because getting those extra buffs is very, very nice. So now let's move on to our buffs. So if you are using the Party Boy or Party Girl perk card, then you will want to use any pre-war alcohol. I would recommend whiskey because it gives you +6 to your strength, which is very good because it will give you more damage. So the next buff that I would recommend is any of the meat-based meals that will give you melee damage. The cheapest one I've seen to make is the Yogwai ribs. You get +40% to your melee damage. Now, the thing about this is that if you're using the carnivore mutation, this will be +80%. So you can see right here that it says melee damage +80%, but when you actually go into the item, it just says +40. It is 80% if you're using carnivore. Now, the thing is, you can get better food items to do a lot more damage, but they just cost more to make. This is literally the easiest one to make. Now, the next buff that I would recommend is the Super Chem Mark 1. You get +30% of melee damage, 25 damage resist, and +2 to your strength for 5 minutes. This is a huge damage increase, and this comes from the legendary perk card, Brawling Chemist. I would recommend putting that legendary perk card on it just to get this chem, because it does a lot for you for this build. Now, when it comes to the magazines, I would recommend Grognak the Barbarian 1 because it gives you +15% to your melee damage. It's a nice little boost to have, and I would recommend it. But then you also have the Bobblehead melee, where it also gives you +20% to your melee damage. Once again, very nice to have, and I would recommend it. And if you are using magazines or the Bobbleheads, I would recommend you put on Creator, the perk card, just so it lasts longer on your character. And there you have it. You are now unkillable. Go out into the wasteland and become an actual god. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you for the next video. Thank you and goodbye.